Perhaps it's a good thing to be called crazy because now it feels like the word crazy and different are just synonymous, and that there's a certain necessity to be different to do anything that is noteworthy. And there's no other great example than William Blake, who was seen as a madman in his day, but his poems, his stories, his work live on to this day and have inspired countless people. So we're going to talk a lot about William Blake. If you're not familiar with William Blake, he is perhaps the greatest poet who ever lived, at least in my eyes. And he was born in the 18th century, lived to the early 19th century, and his works have a certain soul to them. They have a certain imagination to them. And I'm going to hopefully explain some of his ideas, hopefully steer you in the right direction of where to start and the works that really struck a chord with me. And yeah, this is just going to be a love letter to William Blake and his art and his works. And Blake's interesting because he's referred to as a romantic poet. I don't really see any similarities with him and other romantic poets. I think he is kind of his own animal because Blake wasn't educated. He was a man that just read the Bible and was inspired by the Bible. He did not receive any sort of formal training. In fact, I feel like this really adds to his work. I feel like this really kept his work so unique because he wasn't taught to do things in a certain way. He learned himself, and this is something that I always advocate for. I feel like the self-education is always the real education. It's not what people tell you to think. It's what you develop, the formulations on how to think and the frameworks on how to think that are really going to set you apart from others. But anyway, Blake's central idea is that the imagination is everything, that the imagination is the greatest liberating force to man, and that when man accepted his imagination as his way out of things, that the world would be healed, that the world would get away from the mechanical state of things. Think of the idea of like someone that's self-defeating. Think of the idea of someone that is already in their own head before they even step up to the plate, and because of that they never put themselves out there. Because of that they never get over their fears, and they've already defeated themselves before it even begins. That's really central to Blake's idea, and that if you believe there's only one way to do things, then there's only one way to do things, but there's always another path, there's always something else you can do. And there's a very good quote of William Blake from The Marriage of Heaven and Hell that's something along the lines of, a man with a mechanical mind could never create something that held but a candle in the wind to the works of Shakespeare or Dante. And more or less what he's saying is that the person that is a linear thinker can never do something that is going to stand the test of time, can never do something that's going to rewrite the game. And I think this is really central to a lot of the stuff I say, and it's super aspirational to me because I don't know about you, but I don't want to live an average life. I don't want to do the average thing. I don't want to do what everyone else is doing and get the same result. That's just not who I am. I have to find my own path. I have to find my own way, and I'd rather roll the dice. I'd rather have fun. I'd rather try. I'd rather fail. I'd rather experience every aspect, every facet of life than just take the safe option. And perhaps this is why Blake strikes me so strongly. Perhaps this is why I feel it so deeply in my heart when I read his poems. But there's just a freeing, a liberating aspect to his writing. And Blake was somebody that was deeply inspired by the Bible. I emphasized this earlier, but pretty much every reference he makes is to the Bible. Pretty much every painting he makes is to the Bible. You can see one of his prints on the front page of this book that he would engrave into the metal plates that he wrote his poems on. And if you have the chance, go online and just look up William Blake's stencils or William Blake's paintings, and you will see that as he wrote his poems, he also included these engravings that were somewhat horrific but beautiful in their own right. And it's just so impressive that somebody could be so gifted lyrically, so gifted poetically, and so gifted in the terms of pure artistry as well. And the things that I really want you to pick up by Blake are, first, the Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. It's a very short booklet. I'd say it's probably 40, 50 pages, but it's all poems, and there's a central theme of yin-yang. There's a central theme of push-pull, and that's really central to a lot of Blake's ideas. Think of the Tao Te Ching, or think of Heraclitus, or just the paradoxical nature of life. The two poems in particular that if you want to just look up and you don't want to buy the book, you don't want to pick up the book, just look up The Lamb and the Tiger. I think those two poems are kind of indicative of what the entire work will be, and I think those are two of his more famous works. But it's really about the nature of things, the nature of the need for balance, and that there's no such thing as good or bad. It's just our interpretation of it. But the other thing I really want you to pick up is The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, which I think is at least so far, what I've read Blake's strongest work, it really resonated with me the most. It reminded me a lot of Sand and Foam by Khalil Gibran, which is another one of my favorite works. But The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, again, is essentially about the essence of life and everything that needs resistance in order to be meaningful. That without experiencing sadness, you don't appreciate the happiness, that sort of idea of things. And there's a section of it in particular called The Marriage of Heaven, no, The Proverbs of Hell, which is essentially Blake's effort to write things that seem confronting, that seem against tradition, but are in fact the norm, are in fact the point of things. And it's really a tremendous work to read, and I really urge you to pick up Blake, because I've just found something in Blake's writings that are so unlike anything else I've ever read, and I just wanted to bring it to you guys. I need to find a better way to cover some of the poetry. Perhaps maybe there's a point where we break down individual poems and explain them and explain what it means, and at least in the context of my mind, because everything I've seen on Blake has been like, oh, he used this rhyme scheme, oh, he used this word, oh, that's what this word means. Instead of getting to the nitty-gritty details, they do the nitty-gritty details instead of getting to the soul of the work. And perhaps that's really the avenue that I should cover, because I don't think most people understand the deep heart of what he's trying to say, and the deep mysticism and the deep spiritual essence that exists in his poetry. But yeah, with that said, if you want to read something similar to William Blake, go ahead and read my book. I don't know how similar it is, but I try to put my own spin on things, and I think there's an interesting and unique path that I've been taking, especially inspired by Blake, Gibran, Borges, people like that. And yeah, it's been fun recently. The reception for the last few videos I've done has really been awesome, and I just want to thank you guys for that. I want to thank you guys for all the support recently. It has been crazy. New things coming, big things coming. I have a lot of exciting things coming down the pipe. Stay tuned. Stick around on the channel. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.